Today in this video, we're going to go how to assess a squat. Now, I'm going to be assessing my own squat because I know that I teach them all the time, and I really feel that I do them right, but I usually never videotape myself. So I was alerted yesterday by a coworker about a couple faults that I had, and I told her I didn't even feel it. I did not feel it at all, which is common. It's really common. And I tell patients and athletes all the time that you need to be coached through this stuff, because a lot of times if you don't see it and you don't feel it and you're not getting good feedback from somebody, then it's really hard to correct. So we're going to go over my squat today, and I hope you guys learn a couple things from it, and we'll digest it at the very end. Now, looking from the side angle like this, I would really like to see shin angle, bar path, depth of squat, posture. Are we leading with the hips, driving up out of the hole, and overall posture. And one thing I notice on this, more so than anything else, because everything else doesn't look too bad, is the extension at the top when I'm waiting there, like right now. The low back is really extending, which actually doing this, I had no idea until I watched this video. And so here's the depth of the squat. It looks like the posture is pretty good. I'm dropping below parallel. By the way, dropping below parallel is not 100% needed for everybody, because some people can't tolerate it based upon different things, but I certainly can, and I'm not flexing forward or butt winking or anything of that matter, and it looks like my upper back and my lower back are keeping nice position. Now, halfway up, it looks like my lumbar spine or low back curvature is increasing a little bit, but not that much. Overall, we're not really in a danger zone yet. Now, up here, this is where I usually take rest if I'm fatigued from the lift, period. And look at this posture. I mean, I'm so far away from that line that I drew right there, and especially it's much different than the past pictures when I'm at the depth or halfway up. So it really concerns me because I shouldn't have a lot of fluctuations in posture. So to remedy this, I'm actually going to go through some active loading, but first we're going to check some of the other angles, looking from behind. Now here's a close-up again of that line, and you see how far away I am, and we're going to correct this later again. So let's look at it in full speed again, just to make sure that you guys are seeing what I'm seeing as well. The bar path is going to look a little wonky on this one, just because I'm a little bit ahead of where the camera's line of view is. Now from the back side, I usually look at symmetry to see if the knees are stacking over the ball of the foot. Is there any cave of the knee? Am I leaning to one side? For the most part, all this looks fairly good. My largest concern so far is that other view where we have the postural issue. The right knee is a little bit shaky on the way down, so that's something I would end up correcting later. But overall, it's not a huge safety issue at this point. Now, active loading is when we actually pull the body into the position, and for this I'm using a band on top of the rig. So the band is pulling me up, but I'm actually forcing myself down into the deepest part of a squat and trying to keep posture along the way. Now at the top portion, or at the bottom portion, you see that everything's nice and flat. Actually, everything improved actually from what it was. And partway up now, we have a little bit of loss of posture into that low back area. And at the top here, we see it's dramatically improved. It's not stellar, but just keep in mind there is a range of what we would consider still normal for this type of position or posture in a squat or other types of exercises. So it's individualized for each person, but for overall, this is a dramatic difference from what we had before. So here's our before on the left, here's our after on the right, and I hope to God I can tolerate, or I can get myself to recognize this with some external cues while I start to load it, because that's what we're going to do next. Because if I keep lifting like this, how I am on the left, eventually I'm going to shred up a lot of the facets and backside elements of the back. Now the cues, external cues I chose to use were a proud chest and a forceful exhale. So proud chest, forceful exhale. And this helps me lock down some intra-abdominal pressure and create rigidity in the lumbar spine or in the trunk. And I think if I'm able to do this while I load it, I think I'm going to have a lot more success. and safety. Now, as I was loading it, the first thing I did was I didn't walk away from the rack. I stayed at it, and I actually didn't lift the weights, and I wanted to see if I can simulate and get that same posture with the same external cues. And obviously I took a picture of it to see if I can still, if I have any changes from when I actually picked the weight up versus walking back. So this is me still on the rack. Next, I drove my feet into the ground to extend the hips, and you see we lost a little bit of posture. That's something I get to correct over time here. But for the most part, still much better than the resting position that I was in before I evaluated the squat in the first place. Now, after walking back away from the rig, you're going to see that the posture or the extension of the spine actually increased in the low back area. And this is something I actually didn't even recognize. I didn't feel it. I thought I was still really good how I was when I was at the rig. But this is something where I need to remind myself that these external cues are something I have to consistently get before I actually squat down. I have to reinforce this movement pattern. Over time, eventually these external cues will be really, really helpful to get me to be able to have better form consistently. Now let's see what the actual movement looks like. I slowed it down because I want to make sure I was paying a lot of attention. And this looks much better to me at the top. And I can see I'm finding my posture again by doing those same external cues. Now after all that, I wanted to see if I can keep it while actually doing a workout. So I did some squats with increased speed, normally how I would, and I used the same types of cueing. And then I took a little bit of a break, about 20 seconds, and I came back to it. And as you can see, there's still some issues at the top. I'm still extending. So I can definitely tell that this is going to take some time for me to actually start to learn and make automatic. My next progression for assessment was actually just to do some cleans, because obviously it's the same front rack squatting, front squat when you catch it and press it up. So as you guys can see, the extension is slightly there at the top too. And obviously some of these are better than others, and I'm not going to focus on which ones are better and whatnot, because I'm sure you're watching it as well. But I think overall, in theory, I shouldn't have so much fluctuation, and nobody should, because all it takes is that one improper lift to hurt yourself, and I'm no exclusion to this rule. So I really need to clean this thing up and work on cueing without weight to improve my form. Now this was a really good experience for me because I've never actually videotaped myself squat for this much detail. I mean, I've done some personal records and whatnot where I've videotaped them just to show people because I was proud of it, but I've never really evaluated too much of my form with it. So this is enlightening to me to see that I think that I'm in the right position, but really I have a lot of work to do as well. External cues were really helpful to me to be able to get back into position. And external versus internal cues, in case you don't know, external cues are how your body affects the surrounding environment, or it's focusing on something else other than like what your joints are doing or what your muscles are doing or which ones you're contracting. It's more of an end result of what your body does, like driving the feet through the floor rather than contracting the glutes. So if you have more questions on things you'd like to hear about or see videos on, feel free to put the comments below, as well as please critique my form as well. I'm always learning. I feel like I know a lot of stuff, but I'm always open to more suggestions. So p2sportscare.com is where you can find more information about me and the stuff that I put out. I have a podcast as well that I answer as many sports medicine questions as I possibly can, and you can have yours featured on air as well. So go on there. We have courses on the P2 site, as well as some references to any of the stuff that you might be looking for. You're like, hey, where do I get that? It's on the resource page. So hope to talk to you guys soon. Take care.